Carolina Rapezzi.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Renowned and award-winning photographer. And I just want to learn from you a little bit. You know, I know you've been in Ghana particularly. So some of the documentaries I've seen, and you know, I was influenced by this way back, somewhere around about 2007. I saw a documentary, and I think when we spoke earlier, you alluded to the fact that it was probably a similar time frame that you saw something that really stirred some emotion in you. So that there's a local dump or amenity site, they call it these days, very close to me here. So, you know, within less than a mile from here. And in that documentary, they tracked an item, an electronic item that we assumed and believed was getting reclaimed properly or recycled properly. And that item was tracked, and it basically found its way to Ghana. So that's how I first became aware of the issue. Prior to that, I was aware of our e-waste, or the Western world's e-waste, going to China. We were seeing that back in the form of counterfeit components. So the Chinese were very resourceful and used our waste to turn it into something they could sell. But it was counterfeit components or refurbished, remanufactured. This is a bit different. The way things happen here, and from the photographs you shared with us, it's quite a different setup here, isn't it?
So in that place, what you see is actually the last part of the process. So there is the first approach from locals. They do try to repair these devices once they arrive. So the main part where these devices arrive is Tema, which is a different city from Accra. From that, they might be resold across the country, specifically more in the capital. And from there, you know, these devices might last 2-3 years, few months, few days. We don't have statistics on these yet. They might, you know, so they end up in these second-hand shops, and then from there eventually in these places. They do try to repair them as much as they can. And then if they can't, they dismantle them, and then part of these devices they go into burning areas to extract raw materials. So it's a chain. And these raw materials, it's then sold. We need to think that for the people living there now, that's the living.
Yeah, and I think that's an important part of the economy from what I can gather. They need used items. They can't afford new items. Is that right?
Absolutely. So the second-hand market is huge. And of course, there are shopping malls, there are shopping centers with new items, but they are extremely expensive for, you know, the average population to afford them. So that's why a lot of people buy second-hand electronics. Once it arrives, you never know where it ends up and how long it will last. And also the way they keep these electronics in these second-hand shops, it's not like a shop as we think. Most of the times they're kept outdoors, so there's dust, might be rain, it might be like external factors, of course, damaging these electronics. And so it's hard just to track
And
down.
potentially shortening the life,
Of course.
of the used item.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it is important to reuse items wherever we can. Certainly believe in handing down any products I'm finished with to make sure they have a longer life, and I guess that's what's happening here.
There are many shops, repair shops. The image that we saw with all the keyboards piled up, and the guy with the laptops at the back. So there's a lot of shops trying to repair them, and they do it.
And that's resourceful too, isn't it? So I mean, these people are resourceful. They are talented.
They are.
You know, in the Western world, we've kind of lost that ability to repair things. You know, I'm getting on a bit now. I'm 55, and when I was young, you called the TV repairman when your TV broke, and he would literally come and solder a new capacitor into it or something like that. And it was a relatively simple repair. I mean, I've repaired TVs myself. My brother and my mother both had a TV. I'll not mention the brand, but both failed. A quick Google was able to identify the likely component, and we had the component in stock. It was a $2 part, and I know one of those TVs is still going now 15 years later. Yeah. So, that really did lengthen the life of it, but there was nobody anywhere I could have called that would have done that repair here in the UK.
Yeah. Because repairs are not convenient anymore, and things are cheaper just to be replaced, so it's that speeds up the process a lot more about buying and consuming, and what we should be more careful and mindful about slowing down a little bit, and repairing is a good option. I mean, it's really the key for a slower consumption.
Yeah, I mean, here with cars, for instance, they plug them in and they just say that device is faulty. They throw the whole device away and replace it, and it might be £2,000 or £3,000 or dollars, you know, that sort of magnitude. But it's just disposed of, the whole thing. You know, chances are there's one little component inside that product that's actually faulty. But they're very hard to repair. You know, a lot of things are really difficult to repair now. There's also the cost. You've got to think about, so they basically say it's not worth the time to fix this thing. But the cost is more than just the physical dollars or pounds to replace or repair that item. It is the cost to the environment. It's the cost to the planet itself.
Absolutely.
Should be considered. And in the Western world, you know, my feeling is that as users, I mean, I love technology. I use technology all over this house, all over my life. But, you know, ultimately, I have to pay from cradle to grave for that product, really.
Absolutely. Also because we need to think about the substances used in these devices. What happens to that object, and what happens, you know, when those substances are released into the environment. And an important point about this is we know which elements are contained in these phones or appliances. What we don't know is what happens when all of these substances coming also from industrial production and other activities are interacting once in the soil or in the air or in the water. So we still don't know, because maybe like in 20, 30, 50 years time, we will have different allergies, different pathologies. Fish contains plastic and microplastics. We don't know what other substances are changing the elements and what we are absorbing from these.
Yeah, some of the stuff they showed us was really striking, you know, when they were fishing and bringing in fish, but they were literally having to separate fish from waste. To our eyes, that's quite terrifying, you know, seeing all this industrial waste in amongst the fish. So, those fish must be contaminated.
Yes, it's very contaminated. And those fishermen, they do spend hours separating the fish from the rubbish every single morning. And you've seen how many men, you know, they had to pull these nets. So the nets are very, very heavy because there's a mix of waste in that. There's not just fish. Mm-hmm. So it takes like 5, 10, 15 men sometimes to pull these nets. And then they have to spend hours there. That's, you know, valuable time for them as well. Where I was in 2018, 2019, there was the onion market just nearby. There was the vegetable market. And also within one of the burning areas, there was a slaughterhouse.
It's like a side. We've got components now that we're seeing corrosion on. So it's just copper. You know, it oxidizes. It's natural for it to oxidize. But we've suddenly been seeing some copper oxidizing much faster than normal. We did a study and we used a really well-renowned laboratory close to us here in Scotland, and they were able to slice up this tiny component. So it's only 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters. So it's very, very small. They were able to slice it using some sort of gas, which shows the molecular structure still of the device. So even though you've taken a cross-section of it, you can then analyse it and see what's caused the contamination. And it was fascinating. But this was sulphur that had got into these components. Now, sulphur and copper don't sit well together. And we've done a lot of research to try and work out where the sulphur may have come from. Now, coincidentally, a couple of days before this particular device was made, every device has a date code on it, there was a volcanic eruption. And of course, lots of sulphur comes out in a volcanic eruption. There is reports that the sulphur cloud headed right across the factory. I think it was in Malaysia. So, you know, that was maybe 2,000 miles away, and we're seeing evidence of the damage that the sulphur's done. Yet your slaughterhouse is how far away?
It was within Agbogbloshie.
Wow.
Same ground, same place, same area. And again, as I showed, the the distance between the burning areas and the river, and the seaside is less than 3 kilometers. So as you were saying, just thinking about distances on a scale, the pollution is very hard to calculate, I guess.
And we don't know really the long-term effects on the population because a lot of the people that are working in this site are transient. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. And also it's very difficult for them to go to a doctor and to start a path, like to follow up on their health, because they need to work on a daily basis. And for them, just being away from the burning area of the scrapyard means losing your daily income. So also the quantity of this device is not guaranteed.
So it's not consistent work. So if there is work available, you don't want to miss it.
So you don't leave the place, not even to go to a doctor, unless you truly have something you cannot go. So like bleeding or like serious health issues.
I thought what was interesting about your photography was the other side of that area. The people side, the human side. You spent time with the communities when they weren't working. And it was nice to see a normal functioning community with pretty happy people.
Yes,
despite the situation they were in.
I have to say that I had like an amazing time with them. The title of the project was Burning Dreams, because I wanted, people also to ask them, what if you weren't doing this, what else would you do? Or, and it was very interesting to spend time with them. Also to see who they are apart from working in that place. They just cross the river and they have a life as we all have apart from our jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you and I were influenced at round about the same time, probably by the same documentary, which I can't find anymore. But yeah, it sounds like similar timing that you were inspired to head out there and get some photographs. It inspired me in a different way. I built my business to a level that I was reasonably comfortable, and I didn't have the same drive that I had before. And I was really looking for inspiration, and things no longer motivate me, Way back in the beginning when I was a one-man business, I dreamed of having a particularly nice car, and a very particular car. And that encouraged me to get up every morning and make the phone calls and do the hard work. But that kind of fizzled out a little bit for me, and I was still working, but I wasn't as excited about where the business was going. And that documentary inspired me and gave me a new dream, I suppose. You're talking about burning dreams, but when I saw what was going on there, I felt a little bit responsible. The device that was followed was from my local tip. It could literally have been my device. It could have been my product. It was heading out to Ghana, and I'm quite sure products that I put in that recycling facility have ended up in Ghana.
Yes.
So I did feel a bit of responsibility for it. Obviously, I'm in the electronics industry and have been since I was very young. So a long time ago, 1985, I started in this industry, and it was quite shocking, quite horrifying to think that our almost laziness was, because we can recycle it properly. We have the resources, we have the tools, but to choose to dump it on someone else is just shocking. I created this company because I saw waste. I was walking around factories and saw brand new components piled up in the corner, and I could tell at a glance from 20 feet, several meters, that was valuable stuff, but it was disregarded. You could tell it was disregarded, and that is really what gave me the idea for this business, is that I knew there was value in that, and I knew there was people that could use it, but it was being disregarded. It was going to ultimately end up scrap. It was brand new, traceable stock. So I created this business to redistribute that stuff, because I later learned that an awful lot, I think it's something like 2/3 of the elements from the earth on the periodic table that we see at school are in the average mobile phone. So if you're taking all those elements from the earth to make a mobile phone and then disregarding.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah, sure.
What's the kind of feedback you have had from your clients in these 20 years? How it's changed?
It's definitely changing. So yeah, I mean, I've always had a slide close to the beginning of my presentations about the environment. If I'm honest, early on, so in 2001 I started, nobody wanted to know that. Nobody cared. I had to show them the money. It was all about the money. And businesses, that's how they count their success. That's a measure of success is the money. So I had to find a way to give them the money that they wanted, give them the win that they wanted, whilst ultimately doing what I wanted, which was trying to help in some way, in a small way, a very small way, but by redistributing stock and preventing it from waste is a start. 2007 onwards, I had a much bigger ambition, and that's been driving me since then. And that is to help on the cleanup side. But it's been really refreshing recent years that we're starting to see senior managers, early 30s, and they are much more bought in to the recycling, planet positive type stuff. The business is called Component Sense because it's common sense. That's really all we're preaching is let's just be sensible here. Let's do the easy things. And redistributing brand new stock is a no-brainer. And we're seeing some companies taking up the mantle. We are seeing some improvements, but it's very slow. And I think, particularly if we're waiting on governments, governments typically, particularly in the Western world where there's a 4-year, 5-year cycle, they don't want to push the boat out too much and they don't want to make big claims. And of course, the next government that comes in might just reverse that anyway. We do need a longer term strategy, and we need to be more connected globally. It's one world. A frustration I have here in Scotland is we have a zero waste entity that's supposed to be helping us towards zero waste, but it's only interested in Scotland. So it's only going to help us if we're doing zero waste stuff in Scotland. We've been global from day one. They're my very first customers in China or Japan actually. So we're a global business, and to restrict it to Scotland just seems a bit silly when it's one planet. If it's our waste that's ending up in Ghana, it's our problem.
Ghana's around the corner. We are all on the same planet, and we need to think globally for electronic waste, like with waste in general.
I do want to go out there, and I am more inspired than ever having talked to you today.
My intention is to go back soon. Some of the people, Gaffaru, the deaf guy, he's still there, still burning. So
is he still there?
He's still there, he's still burning. So I'm very curious to know how he is, how about his health and what's changed. My intention is to go back.
Okay, when?
I'm sure.
I would love to go. I must admit, I would love to go and just see it for myself. There's so many jobs could be created in that region, and there is hard-working people, as we've seen, and there is some entrepreneurs in there too. Thank you.
Thank you.